So we are talking parts of a sentence now, and there's three main parts that you're going to want to know anytime you're breaking down a sentence. You're going to want to know the subject, the predicate, and the object, and this will really help you in a lot of ways. The reason we break down sentences to their different parts is so we can start working on subject-verb agreement, we can start taking a look at the different kinds of sentences we have in our writing, and we can also look at how different words are working in our sentences. So it's really important to have an understanding of the basics. All right, the first and probably the most important thing in a sentence is its subject. That's who or what is doing the action. Then you have the predicate, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. The predicate is just a fancy word for a verb, all right? It's the action or state of being that the subject's completing. I know that sounds really complicated, but it's the verb of the sentence. And then an object in a sentence is any noun or concept that's part of that action that's being done. It usually completes the thought. So let's take a look at the example. The streetlights shine brightly in the moon. So who or what is this sentence about? Well, it's pretty easy. It's focused on the streetlights. So there we've got our subject, all right? Once we've got that subject, we just need to ask ourselves, well, what is that subject doing? So what are our streetlights doing? They're shining. So shine is our predicate. And then do we have any objects that follow that kind of complete the thought? And if we scan along, we've got the moon. And the moon's acting as an object in the sentence. And there's lots of different kinds of objects. We're not going to go too deeply into that, but just know that you can recognize that as an object. All right, some tips when you're looking at subjects and predicates in the different kinds of sentences. First of all, it is possible to have compound subjects. So if in this sentence we had the streetlights and the lamps, you would identify both of those as the subject of the sentence because they're both doing an action. You can also have a compound predicate. So if the streetlights were shining and flickering, you've got that compound action. It works together, but you'd identify both of those as the predicate. And then finally, in some tricky sentences, usually commands, you've got an understood subject. So like the sentence, go home. I'm not saying you go home, but that's understood. So you is actually the subject of the sentence, even though it doesn't actually exist there in the sentence. All right, so I think that's pretty, you got that pretty down. Let's take a look at some of these examples. Take a look at them and see if you can identify subjects, verbs, and objects. So we've got the girl threw the ball to the shortstop. All right, who or what is doing the action? The girl is doing the action. All right, so she's our subject. And what's she doing? Well, she threw the ball. So threw is our predicate. And then what's that object that's part of the action? She actually threw the ball, is acting as an object. And we've got another object here because we've added that prepositional phrase at the end. She threw it to the shortstop. All right. The runner sprinted and made it safely to third base. Let's take a look. Who or what's doing the action? The runner's the one that's running and making it safely. So we've got the subject. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. What's this runner doing? Well, we know the runner is sprinting, so we've got a predicate there. But this runner also is making it safely to third base, so we've got to include that as a predicate, and this is one of those compound predicates. All right? And then finally, they made it to third base. Third base is part of that action, so it's our object. All right? Last one. The coaches and players celebrated the victory. Well, who or what is this sentence about? Well, it's about the coaches. They're celebrating. But we've got to also note that the players are celebrating. So we've got an example of a compound subject here. And what are they doing? We already said they were celebrating. So that's our predicate. And what the thought that completes that predicate, the object is they're celebrating the victory. So that is our object. So now you've got it down. Subjects, predicates, and remember that's just fancy name for the verb, and objects are all work together to make up the sentences. Once you've got those down, the rest of the lessons are going to be pretty easy.